So there we go. So I wish that we were able to set up things a little bit better. Just so you guys know, it's really difficult to kind of look into black screens on these Zoom things. So at least if a few of you are comfortable sharing your screen or unmuting, however it works, it's hopefully that'll make things a little bit easier. I'm not. It's up to you. I'm not going to make anybody do anything they don't want to do, but just saying it's a lot easier to be able to see at least a few people on here. Wanted to get started. One of the principles of systems biology is really finding graphical methods of organizing information. And we're going to start rather simply. And there are really two parts to this. And the first is to introduce the concept of mind mapping or mind maps, and then to talk a little bit about word clouds. And these are really simple ideas that probably you've encountered before in some of your other classes. Mind maps are really becoming more and more common these days. And I cannot figure out, hang on, how to advance the slides. There we go. So here is mind maps are, of course, kind of like pedigrees for ideas. If you remember drawing pedigrees in a genetics class or genetics lab, pedigrees are actually grounded and taught from the perspective of the individual that the pedigrees are being drawn for. So usually an individual who comes into, for example, a genetic counselor's office, perhaps an individual or family within an animal population or plant population for that matter, that has a unique phenotype that you suspect of being genetic, and we can use pedigrees to organize that kind of information. And mind mappings are basically ungrounded, that is, they are not told necessarily from the perspective of a particular individual, but rather just a way of playing connect the dots with ideas. This is one of the I get a kick out of this one here. This is just saying, try mind mapping. And I'm going to do a little bit more of this for this semester. I'm going to do a little bit more on these cartoon and or graphic ideas of organizing information. I've kind of mixed, and I'll be quite honest, I have mixed feelings about taking this approach. And you'll see what I mean as the semester goes on. On the one hand, it's very clear that drawing these pictures and drawing them by hand, you could see that this one was actually drawn by hand, and the idea of trying to organize different ideas and information is very helpful. On the other hand, the cartoon nature seems to me you're always in danger of trivializing the ideas or the concepts that you're trying to promote. And let me kind of show you what I mean by this. I'm going to try to lower some elements of my screen here. This is talking about mind mapping, and notice that it's organized into how you do mind mapping, and obviously you can draw them by hand. You could use computers. There's a lot of different software, and I'll show you these in just a moment. They're listed on the left. Where do you do it? You could use it home, work, for your entertainment. Basically, you could use it every place. What do you do with it? And the idea is to find ways to capture and organize your thinking processes. And again, I'll show you some examples of this in just a moment. Why? Perhaps it helps you to remember things. Perhaps it helps you to make connections you may not have thought of before. And of course, everybody can do it and want you to try it. So I want to give you some more concrete examples, and the best way to do it is to show you some examples. I'll just show you some software examples. So I'm going to, I'll show you a couple of them. Actually, I'm going to skip XMind. XMind is a popular one. Students who I've had in class before really like MindMeister, which is an online mind mapping program. I'll show you some of those. I'm a huge fan of FreeMind. FreeMind is a downloadable package. It is written in JavaScript, which means it can be run on any platform. So it doesn't matter if you're using Unix, Linux, Mac computer, iOS. In fact, if you jailbreak your Android phone, you can now run Java on it. You could run FreeMind, or you can run it on a Windows platform as well. And of course, being open source, it's free, which is one of my favorites. Free is really important. And then I'll show you my absolute favorite one that I use quite a bit. It's called the Brain, and I'll show you that one in just a moment. So let me swap my sharing screens here and go to my web browser, which will allow us to look at a couple of different things. And there we go. Hopefully, can you guys see the web browser? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, good. MindMeister is one that students that I've had in the past, especially in systems biology, really like. It is online. You can sign up for a free account. The free account is pretty complete, but it limits the total number of mind maps and the size of the maps you can create. One of the advantages students have found in the past is that the mind maps are shareable. And so you can actually share with one another mind maps. MindMeister, and I'll show you some of the types that they have. This is really great fun, give you an example, an idea of different mind maps in, for example, and I'll bring up an example in biology here, and you can kind of see, hello. Need to back up. This is looking at organs and systems of living tissues and living things, and you can kind of see how they've organized the different areas. So this is part of the introduction for like a Bio 1 course. And so you can see here's Unit 1, cells, and they have all sorts of definitions of cells, cell functions, all the different cell organelles, and of course, similarities and differences between animal and plant cells, and designs of the microscope. This one is pretty simple, but obviously it's Bio 1, but you could see how very quickly you could assemble this kind of a mind map to help you to study. And a number of students have used this. In fact, I had one student last time around in systems biology say, boy, they wish they had this for Bio 1 and Bio 2, because it would have been a great way to organize their notes for studying in that area. So this is really a really handy way to put together ideas. I have the FreeMind software is here. FreeMind is, as I said, free. I really think it's a very powerful program. It doesn't include as many pictures. I'm going to show you some screenshots here. It tends to be very verbal. So this shows kind of, here's an example of a health free mind. And you can kind of see this is showing a person tracking their actual medical records, et cetera, in, see if I can make it a little bigger. There we go. Tracking medical records in their life. And so you've got medical records, you've got any times they had pain. You can see there's a eustachian tube entry down here, reflux, all sorts of kind of interesting backgrounds about this person's health. Really convenient way to organize health information. This person utilized a mind map of their health issues to help the doctor identify all the symptomology and realize that this person had a rheumatoid issue and actually had rheumatoid arthritis. So it was really kind of an interesting approach, something a little bit different, way to organize things. You can visualize it all in one spot and actually create a new way of evaluating data. So this is just another one. I like FreeMind. The difference is FreeMind really looks, you know, it's very simple text-based with interconnecting lines, kind of like a pedigree analysis. The advantage, of course, of some of them, and I'll show you an example in just a moment here. Let me back up one sec, is one of the things you could do if you were going to use mind mapping, and this is my MindMeister, and let's see. So this is my truck, and basically you could begin by adding, you know that the truck is overheating, you know that it's leaking antifreeze. Oops, my bad. And of course, you could start to spread these guys out. Okay, so we've got some symptomology here, and you can be thinking, okay, well, what are the components? So the problem is pretty much in the cooling system. And you might wonder, didn't get it, hold on. One of the examples is you can change overheating. You could say, okay, that's a red flag, that's bad. There's a red flag. There's a red flag. We know that this is a problem in the cooling system. So you can actually create ways of connecting them, of aligning them, all sorts of different ways you could do it. If you were in the cooling system, you could actually add in here. Come on. Go. Oh, it's being cranky. Sorry, I haven't used MindMeister in a long time. I sometimes forget the commands. So we know that there's a cooling system issue here. We can add, what do we know that might be involved? Could be a thermostat. Could be a hose. Could be the water pump. And in fact, in my trunk, it was all of these things. So finally got it fixed yesterday. And so you can go through this and you could see how you could create a visual of all of the things that has been happening within any particular problem, issue, or any biological system, which is eventually where we're going to get. I use, as I mentioned before, I use a thing called The Brain. You can find it at thebrain.com. You can use it to look at, let's see, I'm going to back out of here. Let's go to this other server. You can kind of go through here and see, for example, I like the brain, and you'll see why. This is a for sale service, but I think it has just such a large upside that I use it all the time. I actually have, for example, this is my home network. So when I use my computer network, and you can see how this fits into that computer network or electrical engineering perspective. My home network, the name is Mageddon. And yes, that's before like Armageddon. Those of you who follow either Marvel Comic Universe Avengers movies, or if you follow any kind of Norse mythology, it's kind of the end of the world. But this is just Mageddon, which is the world, okay, of Norse mythology. You could see that I have information about my router, my modem, the computers, my DVR, printers, wide area network modems, and of course the wireless computers in my network. Now it looks fairly simple here, but notice what I can do is I can actually click on any of the subcategories, and you can see that it immediately gives me a list of IP addresses for the router. So I can go ahead and look in my variety of IP addresses, domain name servers. So it becomes a really quick way for you to actually go through and look. Here are my different wireless computers. Yes, I know there are 5 of them, and they have weird names, I know, but that's just the nature of the beast. And within each of these, there's information. This happens to be in a Lenovo X60. It's got its MAC addresses. So in one place, I have all of the information about my home network and all of my computers in one little diagram. And I find this to be so helpful to be able to just pick this up. As I said, the brain is a little on the expensive side, but I use it for my consulting business and I use it for school quite a bit. And I like the fact that it is animated. It becomes very easy to collapse and expand individual elements of this. And you could see if you were going to put in, and we'll see examples later in the semester of how mind maps are a great way to present metabolic networks. And we'll see how it works for different metabolic systems as well as just basic mind map or basically personal information. I kind of like this. I like this one best of all. The other advantage that this does have is, and the reason it's a pay service, is it's not just a matter of drawing some of these items, but you can actually attach documents to this. So most of you have looked at your either your My Files or your directory structure using, let's see if I can get a quick picture of this. There we go. I'm going to switch sharing. One moment. So most of you have seen this, our classic document setup in Microsoft Word. And what is this really except an expandable outline, right? You've got folders listed, you've got documents listed, you can move up and down. We can look at, for example, downloads, faxes, you can get into Dropbox. These are all pretty standard. Here you could see photographs of duck membrane eggs that I had before in previous years of different research projects. You can look at a couple of different applications. You may recognize HaploPainter as being a pedigree drawing program that we used in genetics lab. So this is just an expandable outline. But sometimes, for example, I might want to look at what publications or student posters arose from collecting data on our 2012 duck egg membrane photographs. So if we were taking measurements of the micrographs and then eventually analyze the data, there might be spreadsheets. In fact, there are. There were spreadsheets. There are student undergraduate research posters. There are abstracts that were submitted to scientific meetings and ultimately papers published in peer-reviewed journals. And this kind of a format or an expandable outline is really not suitable for showing the interactions among and between all of those different components. So the advantage that the brain has is I can go into, and I'm going to switch. Let's see, where's my, what you can actually do, and the advantage is you can create, this is an entire project that was done looking at protein or peptide components of cranberry extracts that inhibited bacterial adhesion to eukaryotic cells. And so you can see now all of a sudden, instead of just having a linear outline, I can present all of this information in the way that they're actually related to one another. And you can kind of go in here and see we have an adhesion assay, we have a particular substrate, we have the different fluorescent tags. There are 3 of them. AMCA and YoPro are used for protein for protein tagging, and DAPI, of course, is used for DNA tagging. So we have these layers of structure that you're just incapable of putting together using a standard outline format. So this is one of the reasons that I really like this a lot. And what we can actually do is, for example, we can go to Cyber Green here, and we can actually attach a file to this particular tag, and we can actually put a file and attach it in here and actually keep our documents arranged in the same multi-dimensional structure as opposed to using just our file manager. So I thought this was a nice little, just a brief way to introduce you to the concept of mind maps. I'm going to swap my screen sharing here in a minute. Where'd it go? There it is. So, and to encourage you, we will see several iterations of mind maps related to both more conceptual structures, but also eventually culminating in a way to review metabolic information and biochemical pathways a little bit later on in the semester. So this is just a great way to take a peek at them. I can't draw to save my life. I don't know about you guys. Everybody has different levels of artistic ability. I pretty much have 0. So I really, really like the online format as opposed to the person who did this example. This was actually drawn by hand by this fella here, Paul Foreman. And I would never have an opportunity to draw something like this in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I can't even draw straight lines without a computer. So I'm really kind of in tough shape. But I love the different software packages that allow you to do this. I was a big fan of outlining and note-taking all throughout my college and university careers, but this really offers you an additional way to organize information, and we'll try to show you some examples of this in a bit. Of course, what I wanted to do, and one of the things that we're going to do today, is actually to talk about something called word clouds. And word clouds are another way of organizing and presenting, and in a different context of mind maps, of actually analyzing information. Analyzing information. And so between today and probably Tuesday, we were going to try to get it done between Tuesday and Thursday. But now, of course, thanks to our snow days and my truck, we're going between Thursday and next Tuesday. But we'll catch up. Is the object to create some word clouds. And we're going to create our word clouds by using R. So I'm hoping that everybody has R up and running. We will try, I'll show you a little bit of how to use it right now. We are going to use R Studio, okay? So we are going to use R Studio. You are certainly more than welcome to use command line R alone and just run it in a terminal program. I find that everybody learns like that at some point, and you'll learn some of the terminal programs, some of the terminal commands in R Studio, but the advantages of R Studio far outweigh their disadvantages. So we'll talk a little bit about this. I love this graphic. This is how everybody usually learns R, and of course, they say, okay, load R, and then there you go. And, you know, most people learn R by getting thrown into the pool and actually learning R, but there's always some percentage of these kids who drown and never learn R, and they go through all sorts of problems. So I'm not going to do that to you. We're going to actually talk about how to run R and some simple ideas. So hopefully everybody's got their R running. If you have the ability to run R at the same time as watching the lecture here, feel free. If not, don't worry about it. You can look at both the recording of this video and kind of play along with the recording, which will be up by the end of today once I convert everything to YouTube format. Or, of course, I will have the individual instructions that we're using loaded up in a separate document to accompany the video, so you can just go step by step at your own speed, all right? Now, when you start R Studio, and let me just double check rather quickly, 1 second. I got to tell you that you can run R Studio if you're running it from a Mac or from Windows. You can run it through Anaconda, or if you downloaded and were able to put the R Studio my R Studio disappeared. Don't panic. It's only a cooking show. There we go. Or if you want to run it as a separate application, you could just run it as a standalone. So you could either run it, go into Anaconda, start the Anaconda Navigator, and start R Studio using the graphical method. And again, let me swap over so you see where we're talking about. So you can run it through, I have no idea where my Anaconda is here. Don't panic. Sorry. There we go. So you can run it through Anaconda, and you can see in the lower right. Right now on my desktop computer, RStudio, you can see the little icon is still moving. I've got software loading. It is updating my RStudio installation via Anaconda. Hopefully, so I'm not going to be able to show you, but normally there's just a little launch button here and you launch RStudio. If you don't have that, then basically all you're going to do is start RStudio, and here is what RStudio looks like. Now, RStudio has these multiple tabs here, and these tabs have a huge advantage. Sorry, my phone's ringing. We're just going to ignore it. They have a huge advantage because what you have is you have multiple scripts. And if you look at the top left area, we've got multiple scripts, and you could see, for example, I've got in the upper left hand, I've got some install instructions. We'll talk about the specific instructions in just a moment. And you can see that I've got a couple of different sets of installations here. The reason that this is such a huge advantage is basically I can take this entire script, save it as a text file, and I can either load it later or email it to all of you so then you could run the script. Okay? Now, that's a huge advantage for you guys if I get to write it ahead of time and all you get to do is open a text file and run it. We're not going to do that this time, because this time I want you to learn how to install packages and how to load them into R. But the bottom line is, once we get a little bit later down the semester, and you will be running particular bits of software with your own data set, what you'll be able to do is take one of our preloaded programs, run it, and then upload your data set. So that way you're not spending too much time kind of learning the wheel all again. So here we've got a nice script area where we can save scripts. Below this, you'll see that we've got both a console, but also oh, great, thanks. There's a terminal as well, so we can actually run our own individual commands within a console. On the right-hand top side, you have something called an environment. The environment is somewhere where we can actually put data. Now, this says us arrests. My data is not me being arrested for anything and everybody in my family, but rather this is a data set that we'll use a little bit later on to do some plotting of arrests in the United States and cause for arrest. There's a lot of population data that are fun to use, and they're publicly available, and we can use them to do examples of how to graph. Then down at the bottom, you'll notice in the bottom right area, we've got a file manager, but more, you can actually look, I'm going to skip plots for a minute. You can actually look at packages that tell you all of the different types of packages that are loaded in R. There is a help window, and there's a little viewer, which right now there's nothing to view. But the huge advantage, and the part I use the most, are actually the plot window. And the plot window has tremendous value because if you're running a program, and I'm going to switch windows again. Here, for example, is another example of RStudio. And notice in the lower right-hand box, we can actually see, we can actually see the plot as you issue the commands. So it allows you to see output immediately. And that's a huge advantage because if you recall, perhaps in high school, perhaps elsewhere, if you're running a computer program, sometimes you didn't know it didn't work until the end and you get an error message. In RStudio, you run the program and you see the results in real time. And if there's an error, you can go back and just correct the error immediately. And this will visualize what your output will be so that you're not stuck kind of wasting a day and then for lack of a period or a lack of punctuation or a misspelling, you get the wrong information. So we are going to take a step, and what we're going to do is actually install using RStudio, we're going to install some packages. One of the great things about R is everybody should have loaded the base system. And the base system comes with some simple units that allow you to run R. So what are the things that allow you to run R? I'm going to switch to my live RStudio version. And what do you get to run R? You can do things like really simple stuff, okay? You can use R as a very fancy calculator. You can just type in 2 plus 2, and of course it immediately kicks out the answer 4. All right, very simple. You can use, this is just a basic element of using R. Now, what we're going to do, though, is we want to do more than use R as a simple calculator or a simple statistical package. What do I mean by statistical package? It will calculate means. It will calculate standard deviations. It can tell you variance. But those are all simple descriptive statistics. That comes with the base R package, all right? We want to do more. We want to use, and again, the purpose of systems biology is we want to define things using graphics. So one of the first packages we want to install is something called ggplot. And we're going to install actually ggplot2, which is the second version of a program called Grammar for Graphics for R. That's why it's called ggplot. It's the grammar for writing software to create plots or graphic analyses. And so pretty simply, and again, I'll have these listed as separate commands for you as soon as the video's up and running. And all you're going to do is you're going to install. Now notice, here's another great advantage to RStudio. It immediately, I started to type install, and it gave me two choices: install packages or installed packages. Now, turns out that I want to install packages. So I'm just going, you can either continue typing or you can use your pointing device to click on install packages, and it automatically fills it out, and notice it opens a parentheses. So you can now tell it, again, the packages are always enclosed in both parentheses and quotes. So notice I typed my first quote mark and it automatically gave me the second one. And I'm going to install ggplot2. And once I say install ggplot2, I can hit enter. And notice it begins the process. I don't know if you could see the download window. Can you, or do you just see the console moving?
Just console moving.
Oh, okay. So you could see that it's now installing. And notice what it's doing right now. It's actually installing all of the prerequisite packages that are necessary. And you could kind of read them. They're kind of all sorts of strange names. Computer scientists are worse than geneticists when it comes to naming genes or naming software packages in this case. They have all sorts of strange names. I have no idea what many of them do. PS is pretty easy. That's for creating PostScript files. Color space, pretty easy. It's to allow you to change colors in any plot you write. But some of these things, Farver, I have no idea what it does. Some of them are easy. Some of them you can't figure out. But all of them are necessary in order to utilize the software package ggplot. So you just got to give it a chance, let it run through. It'll take a moment here. Unfortunately, a lot of computer work is just sitting and waiting patiently. There we go. So it now tells you it's downloaded the packages. If you'd like to, I'm going to expand my window a little bit so it all falls in the same thing. So now you've downloaded the package. Okay. Part of R is that you have to tell it which packages you want to use. So you can't just, unlike Windows, where once you install it, later on you'll go back and double click on something. Macs are the same way, right? Okay, it's automatically right on your front screen, ready to be used. That's not true with R. Okay, when you're using R, just because the packages are there does not mean it's available for you at the moment. Now, it turns out this is a requirement of the computational system. R is capable of doing so many different things. So, for example, if all you want to do is plot and you don't need to do multivariate analysis, time series analysis, if you don't need to do genomic analysis, why would you use memory to have all those other programs loaded when all you want to do is plot? So what R gives you the option of doing is only loading packages that you're going to use for a particular analysis. If you install them, it means that the packages are available on your hard drive. You've already downloaded them. So installing is downloading the packages with the appropriate requirements. Okay, these requirements are called dependencies. So it's downloading the requirement, downloading the dependencies, it's ready to be used. But, excuse me, if we want to actually use the software, we have to tell R to load it. So now what we want to do, and we load it by using a command called library. And notice library, again, it comes up with a variety of different suggestions. We're just going to use the first one, library. It opens the parentheses for us. So now we do the same thing. Remember, packages are defined within parentheses by using quotes, all right? So we start with a quotation. Notice we have now it opens a quotation for us. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to use ggplot. Now notice I didn't put 2 in there this time. And hit enter. Oh. There is no package called ggplot. I forgot. We loaded the second version, ggplot 2. Okay? So it just shows you R is great. I'm letting you know when you made a mistake. Okay? So I go, no, I want to do library. always in quotes, ggplot, not 1, but 2. Okay? Once I do that, I can hit the enter key. And there you go. So now I got a warning message, and this is not uncommon, that ggplot was compiled under a different version of R. This warning message is not a problem. Okay, this warning message is not a problem. It's just alerting you to the fact that we have a version here that was compiled under a different version of R than I'm running under this installation of RStudio.
Will you always be prompted if it's correct? Like I hit the library ggplot2 and I got nothing underneath it.
Right, but you have just the open caret.
What?
Did it finish?
It's just blue library ggplot2.
Yeah, but do you have a greater than symbol for next line yet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's ready.
Okay.
So it won't tell you if it's a success, because it assumes, and this is kind of a standard computer coding thing with Unix and Linux. This was originally written in Unix. Is as long as there are no problems, you're supposed to assume that it worked. Now, Windows, of course, and Macintosh computers, assume we're all dummies and have to give you the big ta-da, like, yay, it worked. Okay, now the Unix, Linux, and certainly R are not like that. They assume that if it did what you wanted, you're okay. So if you didn't get a message and you only got the greater than symbol, it means that your ggplot2 was compiled under the same version of R that you had. If it were enough of a difference to cause a problem in the software, I would have gotten an error message. And it would say, and actually it doesn't tell you what to do, it just gives you an error message and says incorrect version. In which case I would have to go back and make sure everything was updated properly. I'm not going to bother with that right now. So let's go on to our next step. What we're going to do, actually, I'm going to kind of move over to, one of these days, I'm going to assemble this so you can see. So
I have to head out, Professor, so I'll catch the rest of the video.
No problem. We'll see you later. Have a good one. So using RStudio to organize your work is really important. Installing these packages, knowing how to install and load packages, obviously, and Will's got one of these things here, when one day you need to quit R, you have to go do something else. Well, when he returns to his RStudio, because he's finished with his appointment now, he can pick up exactly where he left off, thanks to RStudio. With a lot of other software, if you were just using the command line of R, meaning using it within a console or a terminal without all those separate windows, basically you'd have to start from scratch. And that's a pain in the butt. So this way it allows you to do it. And one of the things that we really want to do, and we're going to find that RStudio excels at, is going out onto using internet transfer protocols, go out and get data that's publicly available, bring it into R, use it to plot data, create all sorts of kind of graphics, and then share those graphics back out into the real world. Okay, so we're going to see that that's another area of strength. So we got a couple of decisions about this, and the two decisions you have to make is, what's real? Are you going to save a lasting record of what happened? And of course, where do you want to store that information? And those are really the two things that you have to start thinking about as you run R. So what we can really do here is let RStudio provide interaction, okay? And you can see I use this example to show you that RStudio can allow you to have all sorts of different color schemes. This is the dark scheme for RStudio. I use RStudio on a laptop, and generally if I'm on battery on a laptop, I don't like using white colors for anything on my background screens. And the reason is white backgrounds use a lot more electricity and battery power than dark backgrounds. So this is actually a dark blue night background that I like to use because it uses less power than trying to use white all the time. I use dark mode on my laptops all the time because they make my battery last longer. And so especially if I'm on the road, if I'm working on campus, if, for example, now I don't have a charger for my laptop, it won't bail on me as soon as I'm finished or halfway through a lecture. I get caught here. So this allows us to save scripts, as we discussed. And the way you set your directory structure is like this. What you want to do is something called setwd. And setwd is set working directory. And again, you do it by starting with parentheses and then setting the location. In this case, because we're working on a Windows machine, we are using the Windows nomenclature for setting the path just as you would in your file manager. So in this one, it'll be on my C hard drive, /users / my username is GFB / and then I'm going to say a folder called my data. You can make this whatever you want. I just have it here for an example. So I'm going to switch over to my RStudio. I know this is cumbersome and I apologize, but it's what we got. And what I'm going to do is, if you look down at the bottom, I'm going to set my working directory. Oops. Parentheses, and I'm going to do C:// users / let me double check that I have the correct directory structure. Don't panic. Okay, so it's users, so it's actually my Stockton address. Okay, so it is C:/ users with a capital U, Barbado G, and I'm just going to put it into my documents subdirectory. Okay, hit enter. Notice no error message. I just got that greater than symbol that starts our console. Now, if you don't recall where your working directory is, you can get our Word directory. And it tells you immediately where it is. It tells you immediately where it is. Windows is a funny operating system. Windows does not differentiate between lowercase and uppercase letters when it comes to defining folders and or file names. Macintosh computers and Linux or Unix computers all differentiate between upper and lowercase letters. So I find that if you have two different kinds of operating systems, and a lot of people have, for example, which we don't think about very often, a lot of people have Windows computers with iPhones. And if you share files between the two, it's really important to pay attention to capitalization. It's really important to pay attention to capitalization. So when starting any project in R, and obviously we're referring to RStudio here, we're using RStudio to interact with R. It's really important to make sure that you have everything you need in one spot. You might even think, that set word, maybe I shouldn't put everything in my documents subdirectory. Maybe I should put it in a different place. In other words, maybe I should call this some other name to separate it from all of my other R projects, in which case I might want to change where it is. Now, I can start typing all over again. I can start typing set working directory, open the parentheses, open my quote, go to the next, and retype my user directory. But we can use a shortcut of the console in order to go back and revisit that. And that is, you can use your up and down arrow key. So if I want to get back to my set working directory, all I have to do is use my up arrow key. There's my first previous command, get the working directory. Here is my set working directory. And instead of just putting it into my documents directory, I'm going to put it into my, I'm going to call it word cloud, because we're eventually going to create word clouds here. And all I have to do is hit enter. Uh-oh. Can't change working directory. So now you see the error of our ways. So we can try to and what we can do is notice there's a great little comment down here, F1. If you get caught
in a browser, you plug in some.
Quiet. So I can't remember the command to erase the set working directory. So I can go back to help, and I can say change working directory. You can do it. Come on. I have no idea why this is not working. There we go. So we have a series of commands here. And we don't have a way to delete it. I thought this would show right away our delete. Nope, I guess that just gives it, there can be more than one representation, and the less is it. Well, for whatever reason, our help is not very helpful here in erasing our working directory. So we may have to just erase completely change our environment, which is a bit of a pain. So I'm just going to leave this alone for now, okay? Meanwhile, we know that everything will continue in the documents subdirectory. So let's see, where are we here? Most places, and this is why I don't want you guys to feel like this. This is kind of analogous to, you ever see one of those drawing experiments that they have, and they say, okay, we're going to teach you how to draw an owl, and then they show you these circles, and you got the head and the body of the owl, and then of course they tell you, okay, finish it. Well, obviously, adding all this other stuff is useless to be able to tell you. You need to keep track of all of the individual parts, all the individual instructions, not just the brief overview. I always like this when it comes to coding, is whenever you're coding, always code as if the guy who ends up looking at your code or using it will be a violent psychopath who knows where you live. This helps you to avoid shortcuts in coding, and especially failing to annotate your code. Failing to annotate your code, really important part of coding. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to come to an easy stop here. I want to share with you some word clouds. Word clouds take any kind of text and basically show you a frequency distribution of the words within the text by presenting the words in different sizes. So what I did here was I took the text of the US Constitution and I put the text into a bit of our software that we're going to finish coding on Tuesday of next week. And you're able to actually see here, wait a minute, yeah, we should be. You're all seeing the word clouds, right? I just want to make sure. Do you see the state word cloud or no?
No.
Oh, shoot. Wait a minute. Don't panic. I don't know why. There we go. Sorry about that. How about now?
That's good.
Sorry about that. Switching these things sometimes is a pain in the neck on multiple bits of software. So this is a word cloud of all, I took the entire text of the US Constitution and I put it into the software we'll be working on Tuesday. And so the size of the word indicates the number of times that that word occurs within the text. So again, another way. Notice how large the word state is. And in fact, we have state singular and states plural. So states become a very important part of the US Constitution, the focus on states. Notice united is also a very large, but not as big as president. And notice how big the word president is. So clearly part of the role of the Constitution is to describe the relationships among and between the states with the president and Congress. So it really gives you kind of a unique way. And I think most people, if you talk to them before actually seeing this and said, well, what word might you think is the most important word in the US Constitution? You might think independence, you might think freedom, you might think Congress, you might think rights. Certainly there are a load of things that I might think were for this, but the entire purpose of the Constitution is to describe the relationship between all of the states and really the function of the President of the United States. So really kind of an interesting way to evaluate a fairly well-known document that allows us to arrive at a different conclusion. I'm going to ask you to make one of these for yourself. This is actually my resume put into a word cloud. Now, normally what I might have done was, notice it has my name here as being one of the predominant words in my resume. And of course, this is because a scientific resume or curriculum vitae has within it your name as part of all the publications you have. So every publication in a referee journal that I have listed, including grants, including general publications, reviewed publications, etc., they all have my name on it. And so you see, it's way up here. Now, it turns out, here's where you might make a graphical decision. Everybody knows it's my word cloud. So why would I want to keep my name in there? Well, it turns out this is a way of showing a graphical presentation so that I could hand this to someone and say, guess what? Here's my name. I could hand this to somebody who doesn't know me, has never seen me, and they want to know what my areas of expertise are, and they can actually go through here and see very quickly. My name, I am a specialist in poultry, mostly chickens, but not entirely. And I'm a specialist in genetics, fertility, and growth. And that really kind of describes my entire career very nicely in here. You'll also get some other types of information in here. You'll see some names, which are people that I have, people that I've interacted with. Notice in this particular word cloud, notice genetics in the left-hand quadrant in yellow is a capital G, but there's also an orange one just under poultry with a lowercase g. So I might want to improve this by correcting the letter G so that it will be part of the same word cloud. If I add the lowercase genetics to my uppercase genetics, genetics will show up as a much larger word and a more frequent aspect of my career. So we're going to generate, one of our first things we're going to do is we're going to generate some word clouds on Tuesday using R, and we're going to generate word clouds. We're going to take your resume, so make sure you have a copy of your resume handy, and maybe some other text as well. And we're going to do that on next Tuesday. So this is probably a good stopping point for now. Please take the time. I am going to include the complete instructions for other packages to install so that we'll be able to do the word clouds right away on Tuesday next week. Okay? We're good to go. Any questions, answers? Is anybody having software issues? Going once.
Not yet.